Hello, and welcome back to Wine Grants, unscripted chat about the unfunded, the official podcast of the Unfunded List. I'm Dave Moss of the Moss Family Foundation, and with me this week is David Fox. Say hello, David.
Pleasure being here, Dave. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Just a couple of Daves in a booth today. And as usual, I will read David's bio out loud here in the booth in front of him. David is a market leader for PACE Equity, helping farms and farmers adopt renewable and clean energy projects. Now a funder, David also knows the other side of the coin as the founder of Amir. While at Washington University in St. Louis earning his BA in philosophy, David received the Stern Social Change Grant Award and was named a Truman Scholar finalist for his work with Amir. Since graduating, David served as Amir's chief executive officer and oversaw the organization's growth from $30,000 in annual revenues to a $350,000 annual budget. Curing unfairness in our socio-political systems is what drives David, and he's excited to see Amir continue its development as a source of food, learning, and growth for thousands of people. Welcome to the booth, David. Pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
You are, I believe, the first guest we've had on Wine Grants that's actually a recipient of a grant from the Moss Family Foundation.
Oh, that's exciting.
We give grants that other foundations call micro grants, but to us they're important. It was a pleasure to have supported Amir and hope to continue to do so.
Yeah, well, Amir's incredibly grateful to the Moss Family Foundation for its support.
Thank you. That's not why you don't need to.
No, it's true.
You've done a good job of promptly thanking me after most of the gifts arrived.
It's amazing.
You're a good fundraiser, I think.
You just mentioned $350,000 as our budget last year. Of that, $50,000 was from individual donors. Mm-hmm. Normal people out there who, give their hard-earned money to our philanthropy and other philanthropies. Mm-hmm. So, it's
$50,000 from individuals.
Yeah.
Of that $350,000, where does the rest come from?
Camps paid.
So you have an earned revenue.
Yeah, about 40%, and then larger foundations really make up, obviously, a big chunk of that.
That's great. Part of the reason why I wanted to have you here, you're somebody who has successfully received money from some larger foundations. In fact, it sounds like a good part of your revenue from larger foundations. A lot of the folks listening and applying to the unfunded list, some of them are receiving revenue from other sources. A lot of them really are having some difficulty cracking the foundation space. You were quite good at it, and so having you in here, hopefully we can shed some light on some folks who are struggling to get into that.
I'd stop you on your tracks a little bit there, Dave.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, because I'm not necessarily sure I was so good at it. For a lot of our organization's history, the majority and most secure monies that we got was from earned revenue and from individuals. Mm-hmm. I actually found the growth of our foundation support to be risky, to be a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
And you're playing with big numbers too, right? So when you're projecting $500 or $250 from an individual, right? That changing to 180 or 360 is a lot different than saying I'm going to project 25,000 from a foundation or 40,000 from a foundation and it not coming through. Mm-hmm. And so those have a lot more of an impact on your general budget than some of those smaller gifts or more secure gifts that you get from earned revenue. And so one of the great mentors of mine and first people who really helped me get started, her name's Toby Rubin. She ran Upstart.
Yeah, I know Toby.
So Toby said, you know what, David, the best advice, and I don't know if this is good or bad advice because part of me wishes that Amir and my personal success was greater with individual foundations on larger gifts, right? I just saw an organization get $500,000 that was founded around 2010 when Amir was founded. We didn't sniff anywhere near that.
That is a large grant.
Those are large grants. The largest grant we got was $40,000, which is great. It doesn't crack the $500,000 level though. But what Toby said was get as much money from fees that you can, right? And that, run the company as much like a business, or one would say a for-profit business, but run it as much as a business as possible. And I found that to be true advice, and really kept us afloat and continues to keep us afloat today.
I agree with Toby on that. That is excellent advice, especially for nonprofits like Amir that have the ability to bring revenue in. It's not true for all causes. Just real quick, could you do just explain a little bit about? There'll be a blurb when we put this online, but explain a little bit about what Amir is for folks who don't know how to read.
We're a social action education nonprofit that helps summer camps and communities build gardens and farms and do community activism through the process of gardening and farming.
Wonderful. Everybody eats food, so everybody should have some sort of thought about that.
And the garden is a microcosm of the larger world and biodiversity that we all experience. So,
what you were saying, it's very interesting. I think it is, in general, very good advice for nonprofits, especially newer ones, to think about ways that they can bring in money through fees and other things. Because particularly when it comes to projecting revenues, foundations are an absolute nightmare. I have seen some absolute nonsense budget projections from organizations where they're like, well, we're approaching this many foundations and asking for, and like, I've seen charts. They're like, here's all the foundations we're going to ask. Here's how much we're going to ask. Here's the percent likelihood we think it's going to come. And here's them like predicting how much money they're going to get.
And what if they hit it all? And what if they miss it all?
You could, they're both equally possible.
It's an impossible thing to project.
It's such a waste of energy.
It's not a waste of energy, Dave.
The projection.
It's not a waste of energy.
Spending time projecting how much money you're going to get from a foundation is a waste of energy.
You get somewhere there. I don't think it's a waste of energy. I think it's a worthwhile process. I think you need to do it as the executive director of a not-for-profit. That's how it works. Mm-hmm. But it is throwing darts at a dartboard, and it's hard. And it's not secure. And so when you're gambling, it's a gamble. Whereas those other, you started by saying that the Moss Family Foundation gave a quote unquote micro grant to Amir. That is the most secure money that we could project, right? Like it's not a gamble. Right? It's not a gamble. And a lot of the camp contracts that we have and other contracts we have are not gambles. It's just sometimes a gamble with foundations.
And that's part of the reason why I like to do that. I like to tell people when the gift's coming, right? I like to make sure they know well in advance how much it's going to be. And the reason I do that is because I had done the same stuff you were doing. I've gone to foundations and tried to get funding from them. And I understand that while my grants were smaller than some of the larger stuff you were going after, that I could enhance their effect by making it less of a burden for you, right? Letting you know when it was coming, how much it was going to be, so you don't have to spend additional, because I'm aware of how much time gets spent thinking about all the targets, on the internal side. So I tried to make that as least burdensome as possible. It's nice to hear from you that it was, it seems like at least that part of our grants were successful. But yeah, so many foundations come from the older model of philanthropy and charity, where we're going to that any money given from them is a godsend, right? It's one of my least favorite words in philanthropy, a godsend.
Never heard it.
Well, to them, let's go after a hypothetical funder who is as out of touch as possible, right? Imagine Bitsy McCoolahan, right? And she's just she married some billionaire. She has absolutely no, and she's never had to work. She doesn't have any idea what work is like. In her mind, nonprofits have money, and if we give them some money, that'll be more extra money that they have, and they're going to be able to help more people, right? She's an extreme hypothetical, but there are definitely funders who are that far out of touch, right? Who don't really understand that the money that you're granting is for crucial purposes, right? This is why the overhead myth exists. This is why there's lots of foundations that really want their money to go directly to folks. They've never been in an office. They don't necessarily know that there are expenses that are necessary, right? And they're not. That's just much less interesting to someone in that situation, funding office supplies, than I helped the kids learn about gardening, right? And that's why I'm sure your proposals were a lot less focused on the overhead for the office and a lot more focused on kids doing gardening. She might be able, Bitsy might be able to give larger grants to me, but at least I could try to make the process as little burdensome as possible. Something that's just in generally constantly on my mind is that there's a couple things that happen when you give a grant, right? One, money arrives at the organization, which is, I think, the part of grants that people focus on. The other thing is that you took time from the organization, right? Now, some foundations just give grants to like nonprofits without alerting them beforehand. It's like literally just money falls. Sometimes if you're a nonprofit, money falls out of the sky. It's happened to me at some organizations that I've been at. It's not something that you can predict in your budget projections, but at least they're not like taking up time. Other foundations take a tremendous amount of time. In my experience, the average grant proposal that I've written in my life takes about 40 to 50 hours to write properly, right? A full week of work to do a grant proposal to an organization, right?
At least.
Yeah, some proposals, right, are like a lot longer and more elaborate. I applied. I had Michael in here a couple weeks ago. We successfully applied for a $2 million capital grant from the Weinberg Foundation and got it together. That took a lot more than 40 hours. That took like a team of 10 people several months to put that proposal together. I remember the proposal was like 450 pages long. A big part of that was because they wanted our lease.
And then you have grants that don't require a proposal.
Yeah.
Right? Which are just backdoor handshake agreements, which we're also familiar with. Which,
and I think in fact, even if it does, and this is something that I think this is a bit like something that doesn't get talked about. Even when there is the most transparent possible proposal process, right? Here's our proposal. Here's our criteria. We fund based on that criteria. We have program officers who spend time making sure that we have proposals that meet the criteria as well as possible, right? If, for some reason, the board member or the heiress or a really important decision maker within that organization, probably someone whose last name is on the door, if that person doesn't want to give that grant, it doesn't happen. And vice versa. If that organization doesn't meet those specific criteria, but that person does, they get that grant. So you can spend a whole lot of that time that you spend getting that grant goes into figuring out what those criteria are and how those decisions get made. So you could actually you can hit every single point that they're looking for.
Yeah, no, it's about
still not get
yeah,
it.
no. From my experience, I would say the majority of the success of foundation grants are through the same process of individual fundraising, which is a matter of personal relationships, and it's about who you know. Which is, I'm not going to take a stance as to whether or not that's a good or bad thing for the nonprofit industry. I think it's what it is.
Yeah.
But it leaves those organizations who are applying blind to these foundations at a severe disadvantage.
Mm-hmm. It's so I think it's a lot of people think I only criticize. I think you're right. It's either good or bad. It's just how the system currently works. I think every system should be thinking about how it should improve, and I think this system more than others does not spend time thinking about how they can improve.
I'm not necessarily sure that's how it. Right, I agree with you. The premise is true. I'm not necessarily sure that constitutes an improvement. I'm not necessarily sure that ultimate fairness with regards to relationship building is appropriate. Right? I mean, we were talking.
And neither do I. I like it. I one of the reasons why you got grant. I don't give grants when I don't know the executive director. I've never done it.
Right. So. So there
and I'll admit that right here.
So there we go. I mean, it's. Right. So I don't know if that's necessarily the way for the nonprofit field to improve. I think there needs to be more. I think there are ample opportunities for nonprofits out there who don't have those relationships to receive funding. I think it could be more. But it's
one of the things for me. I think there should be opportunities for them to build those relationships. I don't necessarily think we need to remove that piece of it. I think it's great that funders build personal relationships with the organizations they're funding. That's awesome to me. There are some places that I think want to do funding on an entirely metric-based approach, and one of my criticisms of that is that we're solving human problems. You need to be a human, and you need to have some sort of human relationship with the people you're working with. You shouldn't fund just because I like that guy. It should be a mix, right? And one of the reasons why I say I think you were a good fundraiser is because you did a good job of you would talk to me like the way that peers talk to me, right? I had a lot of people who were in my age group who tried to get funding from me, whether it was through Slingshot or the Moss Foundation, who talked to me like I was some old grandpa funder, right? Because that's how they learned how to fundraise. But they were sacrificing their big advantage was that we were peers. They should be trying to relate to me as a person. You, like, we met at I think we met drinking wine, right? Did we meet at it was a Slingshot board meeting?
The first, yeah, it was in San Francisco.
Yeah, and we were at some wine bar.
Yeah,
so that's
unbelievable.
But like, we're both two dudes named David. I feel like you connected with me on that first. We have a lot of things in common, and you found the
well, we
human
were
aspect
interested in using the field of philanthropy to do good work and to enable good things and mitzvot to happen, right? and good deeds to happen. That's what we were trying to do. I mean, that was our common ground. I don't think it mattered so much that we were the same age. I could have been 50, whatever.
I'm just saying, I've met fundraisers who have that's an advantage that we are in the same generation. That's an advantage they have when approaching.
We have social similarities.
I'm not going to give a bunch of grants to if some older person comes to me for it would be much harder for them to get funding from me just because we don't come from the same place, right? And you're from a metropolitan area. I'm from a rural state. Like there are differences between us, but I said you were able to hit both the relationship aspect, and you also ran an organization that was very effective in doing good work that I was interested in.
Yeah.
Right?
I think I was able to convey to you. I was able to convey to you that I'm a man and person to be trusted with charitable dollars to do charitable work, right? And it wasn't, sure, we're going to buy pens and pencils and we're going to have an office, but I wasn't getting rich off of it. The people who worked with us weren't getting rich off of it. The work was going to the work, and the money was going to the work.
And I
think that spoke with you. I think and I'm
not alone on that. It's a legitimate concern that lots of funders have. Something you'll hear from funders all the time. I've heard Fords and Rockefeller say this: is we have limited resources. I heard a guy who works at Gates talk about the limited resource pool that
absolutely
they're working
true,
with. And it absolutely is. They're especially at a place like Gates, who's trying to solve basically all of the world's global problems.
Didn't they cut out malaria?
They're gonna solve malaria probably, right? That obviously was going to take a lot of money. I think it'll be interesting to I'm not a statistician or anything, but once they've eradicated malaria, that's the word you use. Could they have done it for less? Would be a very interesting question for me. Did they make because that's a big part of their focus is making best use of philanthropy dollars, and it's a big interest, particularly of the Silicon Valley style philanthropists. They're coming out now, and I've been enthused. We didn't get a chance to talk about this before the show, but have you been at all following some of David Geffen's philanthropy past couple of months?
David Geffen.
Past year or so. David Geffen is a Hollywood producer. I forget which company, but one of the bigger ones. He's one of the wealthiest men in the country. And in the past year, he's made two highly questionable $100 million gifts. One to the Lincoln Center to rename one of the auditoriums the Geffen Auditorium. Currently, that auditorium is called the Fisher Auditorium, named for Avery Fisher. And so, he approached Lincoln originally, saying, I want to give a $100 million gift. I want you to rename that Geffen Auditorium. And they said, well, Avery Fisher owns the rights to that auditorium. It's named after him. The Fisher family made a gift, and part of that gift was that we would name the auditorium, so we can't, right? So David Geffen basically said, I wasn't there in the meeting, but what he implied, what ended up happening was that they had to purchase back from the Fisher family the rights to rename it Geffen. And they had to give descendants of Avery Fisher $15 million to get those the naming rights back. So his $100 million grant was really an $85 million grant, and he paid for them to repurchase the naming rights, right? And this is in the first place, this is a tremendous amount of money going to Lincoln Center, which is a very well endowed organization that has every ability to make earned revenue. If there's anybody that should be able to fund their operation out of earned revenue, it's a famous concert hall like that, right? That can sell $400, $500 tickets. I don't even know what a ticket to a concert at Lincoln Center costs, but I'm sure it's expensive, and I'm sure it's probably going to be more expensive now that once the Geffen Auditorium is built. Then he made a gift, $100 million to UCLA to build a private high school on UCLA's campus, right? The Los Angeles school district is struggling, right? It's in bad shape. Like lots of large city school districts. So he didn't give money to and part of that causes UCLA to not be able to recruit the top talent as researchers at UCLA.
Why?
Because researchers want to live in a place where the schools are better. This is why Harvard gets pretty much the best researchers, because Cambridge is nice. The schools are good for their kids.
Sure.
Roxbury Latin, and then plenty of private school options.
So UCLA now has its own private school,
which will be called. Guess what it'll be called?
The Geffen Public.
The Geffen Academy.
The Geffen Academy.
The private school only for the children of UCLA professors.
But the Geffen Academy is a public school.
Right. So this is so that and like UCLA already has.
It's going to be a great school.
They have great researchers.
I'm sure it's going to be a great school, the Geffen Academy.
Right. But the thing is that those kids, the kids that are going to get to go to Geffen, the kids of the world's most successful researchers, no matter where their parents are researching, they're going to get to go to a great school.
Yeah.
Right. So they have not improved life for anybody. Geffen wants the school his name is associated with, right? One of the post-grad schools there is called the Geffen something school. And one of the reasons why I made that gift is he wants to be the best in the world, right? They have egos, It's nothing wrong with having an ego, really. It's what sometimes that leads to greatness, right? But like, if the world's best researcher ups and moves from Cambridge to go to UCLA because now there's the Geffen Academy, that's the impact he's looking for. That does not help anyone. That's just somebody doing research at a different campus. And we're talking about enormous amounts of money that could have saved untold numbers of lives, right? And I don't think necessarily all funding needs to go to saving lives. Like research and arts and stuff are important, but it should be like creating new research. It should be doing better things. So
to answer your question, no, I haven't been following the
Geffen. Yeah, that was a big long rant about Geffen. But it's just, that's how, there's funders who think that way. He's very much a recognition focused funder. And I can only imagine the amount of time UCLA had to spend to get that gift. Lincoln Center had to spend time contacting the family of a previous donor and convincing them to sell the name rights back.
Buying them out.
Yeah. That's time that someone's... This is tax-free dollars, right? Like, in some ways, you and I subsidize this activity. It's crazy.
Yeah. No,
we don't need to talk about
I haven't been
David
following
Geffen
it
too much.
I haven't been following it. Those are a lot of dollar signs. 100 million is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. What I like about it is he's gotten none of the press attention he got was any good. It was all rightfully very highly critical. And there's been a couple other gifts. Some people have made some really large gifts to Harvard and Yale in recent months.
Dave, to tell you the truth, I'm not so critical.
You think this stuff's good?
It's philanthropic dollars.
If he wants to do it,
the guy's giving away $100 million. I am not arguing about it. He's giving away $100 million.
He's free to do with his money what he wants.
He's giving it to create the Geffen Academy in UCLA.
He should pay taxes on that. That's just my major objection is the tax deduction. If he wants to spend his money on something that doesn't do any good for anybody, that's fine. Of course he can. People spend money on things that don't do good all the time. They don't get a charitable tax deduction when they do it. Fair enough. I believe, though, eventually, when you have $100 million to give away, that you will make smarter decisions, more impactful decisions.
If I gave it to a school, I'd want to get a tax deduction.
Right. But I think you would give it to a school that was helping people.
We're making the assumption that it is not helping anyone. We're making that assumption.
Yeah. I'm very comfortable making that assumption.
I know you are. I'm not.
It really will.
I don't know. Look, I don't know enough about it.
Not only will it won't help, it will actively under. Yeah.
I don't know enough about it.
We can move on from Geffen. An interesting question to you. What would you do with $100 million?
That's a great question.
Who would you grant that to?
Can I buy a basketball team? No.
It's
not enough money.
You have $100 million to give away.
Give away. I can't buy the Knicks.
Is that not enough?
$100 million?
There's certainly a basketball, maybe perhaps the European, the Tel Aviv Maccabees, maybe. You probably get them for $100 million.
Why do you have $100 million? I actually really like what the Gates Foundation has been doing with its money in terms of solving and curing diseases that need more attention to it. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite sure $100 million is enough to do that in the world, but I think disease. prevention eradication is crucial, because the way our insurance and medical.
So you hate arts in schools. That's what you're saying.
No, our medical infrastructure is set up as such so that a lot of unnecessary dying and suffering is happening. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be that way. It's really sad that a lot of people can't get the medicine that they need. I mean, we could get a Z-Pack, no problem, but you go to places in the world that you can't get the antibiotics and the vaccines that you need that are basic for survival. And that is a clear unfairness between Western civilization and non. And so I would give that $100 million all to that.
To preventable disease prevention.
Yeah. And even one step further, if I knew that there was a way for that $100 million to help cure that issue, the underlying issue of why medicine is going to, predominantly Western places and not other places, then I would use that money for that.
There's the root cause as to why Western folks don't die of malaria.
So there's a.
I don't know if you'll be able to solve colonialism with.
There's a philosopher. There's a philosopher I read in school called Thomas Pogge, who was at one point creating a fund to disincentivize countries from investing in like Accutane and all these things that are drugs that are going to, wealthy families here in America, and they're taking away from drug companies making, disease curing drugs like for malaria. Right, so it's just who's paying for the drugs, right? It's the drug companies are incentivized.
This is very smart.
Yeah, so he was creating a fund to disincentivize drug companies from making the drugs that only help the people who are going to pay.
The question of incentives in philanthropy is a really big one, and also I think it ties in a lot with the root cause prevention in ways that a lot of people don't at least it seems to me don't fully understand. So one of the one of the reasons why capitalism succeeds is because it properly incentivizes the actors in it, right? I want money so I can buy things. That's why I'm going to start this business to build the economy, right? When you're if you were to solve a problem like there in the pharmaceutical industry, there are incentives that don't necessarily people are incentivized to do things that don't necessarily help the world, right? I think probably the oil industry is the best example of that.
Well,
right?
Stick with pharmaceuticals. But that's just a product of capitalism too.
Right.
Right? Because
I'm not trying to poop on capitalism, but
no,
the incentivisms
right.
are.
I mean, right. That's the problem with capitalism. You're saying it's the double-edged sword of capitalism, right? Is that it allows people to create companies that are successful and good, and also good for the world. And it also allows people to make companies that are successful and good and not really necessarily good for the world, because the monetary incentive is the other way.
We are setting. This is a wine grants first. I've had to open a second bottle of wine. It's the first time we've had to do that in the booth. Congratulations. Do you mind? There's still a little bit of your Zinfandel in there, and I'm going to top it off with this cap.
Just do a little.
I think we're going to be fine. So, for those of you listening, David and I have had an entire bottle of wine. We're continuing to talk about grants here in the booth. I have a couple more things I'd like to...
I hope you're not undermining our capacity to speak intellectually about the topics that we're speaking about here on the...
No, in fact, I think we're probably more equipped to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, so if I had $100 million, I'd use it for Thomas Pogge's fund, even though I don't think it's in existence anymore. But I think he was hitting on the right idea that we have to disincentivize to enable the root causes to go away of why people don't have what they don't have.
Yeah. I think philanthropy often treats symptoms. For instance, with malaria, there's a number of things that prevent malaria. Nets, for instance. Right, philanthropy dollars going to nets and things that prevent the spread of malaria I think are a lot more effective than like philanthropy dollars going to the medicine for people who already have malaria, right? Because yes, you're treating someone who's suffering from malaria, but you're not solving the problem of malaria. I think philanthropy dollars should in general go to solving problems rather than treating symptoms.
Well,
but you can feel really good as a philanthropist treating symptoms.
Dave, if you have a cold and you're coughing and you treat that cough, sometimes you get better. How's the Gates Foundation curing malaria? They're buying nets, right? So,
well, they have. I'm not intimate with their strategy there, but they use the word eradicate. I know that. So they're trying to make it so that malaria is not a thing that happens anymore. That's their goal. I think that's a better goal than everybody who gets malaria will get the treatment they need, right? Let's just get rid of malaria, right? Or rather than like let's donate alms to the poor, let's look at the root causes of poverty and fix some of those.
Yeah.
Philanthropy should be a lot more root cause focused. I'd like to go back to Amir a little bit. A lot of the folks listening to the show and a lot of the folks who submit to the unfunded list are looking for their first grant. So I would like to talk about your first grant, which I remember from your bio was the Stern Social Change Grant Award. Tell me about that. How old were you when you got the Stern Social Change Grant Award?
I was 21.
Who's Stern? Just out of curiosity.
It's a family from Chicago that gives money to the Washington University in St. Louis Community Service Office for a $6,000 gift each year.
They give one $6,000 social change grant to a graduating student?
To a current student.
A current student.
Yeah.
What's the mascot at Washington University?
The Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears.
And so you won.
So I was lucky enough to have won. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was the start and was it breathed life into Amir.
They gave you $6,000 to do what?
To go to Israel and build a garden with Jewish and Muslim children.
Really? Very interesting.
Yeah.
Where in Israel?
In the Negev, in the desert.
Oh.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
These were Israeli Muslims?
Jewish children, Israelis, and then Bedouin children.
Oh.
And ironically, we were not successful in bringing together the two group of children. We were successful in building a garden with the Jewish children, though. And it was kind of the first time, it was my first grant, and it was the people who gave me the grant were like, David,
$6,000 for college students. Decent chunk of money.
It was most certainly enough to get started. Most certainly.
So there's a garden, and is it still there?
No, it's not. But they said, look, we didn't give you the money so you could do exactly what you were going to do, right? We gave you the money because we trusted in you, and we knew there were going to be challenges and successes and failures, right? And now I'm also reading John Wooden's book. Success does not mean not achieving a certain goal you set out, right? That's not failure, right? Failure is not doing your best, essentially. Success is knowing within yourself that you did your best, that you tried your hardest and did everything you could, right? So that project was most certainly successful while not meeting necessarily all of its goals. And I know that the community service office at WashU would still look at that project as being really successful because it led to also the development of a nonprofit that still exists and still builds hundreds of gardens each year.
How much do you think getting that initial recognition from the Stern Grant Award helped with the foundation? Obviously, the $6,000 enabled you to go there, build that garden, have programming that you later replicated again and again. But how much do you think the having won that was helpful in the establishment of Amir?
100%.
I wasn't asking for a percent, but
yeah,
so very. But I think what I'm hearing is very.
It was if not for that, then ideas come and go, Dave.
Yeah, a lot of ideas.
Ideas come and go.
I hear ideas all the time.
Ideas come and go. And if it's not the right time, right place, money there, if there's no water, then the seed in the ground is just a seed in the ground. So what does that, and that money is water, right, for that seed. And so you're asking me the question, well, David, if you planted a seed and there was no water, how crucial was that water for the seed?
Well, important. You need.
You can't. Yeah.
My understanding of seeds
It wouldn't have happened.
is that they do need water.
It wouldn't have happened.
No, and I worked at the Seed Foundation, so
No, but
I'm aware.
But do you understand?
seeds need water.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So I think.
Well, I think often. I mean, I've filled out grant applications and asked as well. They usually ask who are your other funders, like who you've been funded by, right? And no one is a really tough answer. Is a tough way to have to answer that question, right? And obviously, every single person who's ever received funding, at one point in their fundraising career, who are your other funders? The answer has been no one for everybody. At some point in their career, probably the beginning of their career. Some people for a long period at the beginning of their career. The answer is no one. Right? It's a tough answer to give. Understandably, a lot of funders, risk adverse, don't necessarily want to be first funder in. Other funders love being the first person in. It's like it's either or, right? They either want to be right. There's a small portion of folks who really want to be early.
You think that's a categorizing factor for program officers?
Yes.
Like you think it's either they love being the first one in or they don't want to be the first.
I believe, and this is from some experience and knowing some folks, that most foundations, particularly your larger foundations, it is something that program officers are spending a really large portion of their time looking at, is where's the other support of this organization. And I'm not necessarily going to say that that's good or bad. I actually think it's probably a pretty effective practice.
Really? My gut is saying the opposite.
So you think foundations should fund things that don't have any other funders?
Who the heck?
Because it begs the question, right? Well, why aren't you being funded?
Well, so that's
if there's a good answer, then
maybe they just started.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fine. So
Right.
if somebody just started, then I've got some other questions, right? Is there anybody else doing this? And again, maybe you've just started something that is new and unique.
Yeah.
But I got to ask that question first.
Okay.
And that question comes from, like, asking who are your other funders. When you say I don't have any other funders, and if that's not necessarily, I don't think it's a red flag. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a red flag, but it begs other questions. Why doesn't this guy have other funders? Is it because he's never asked? Is it because he's new? Is it because other people aren't funding him for a reason?
Sure.
Like there's a bunch of questions that come from that, and I think
There are
it's probably
answers, and there are answers to those questions.
Absolutely.
I think
when you've been the recipient of the Stern Social Change Grant Award, you start off in a really good position to go after other grants, because when you get asked that question, you have a nice, solid, prestigious answer.
Yeah, no, I'm particularly sensitive to foundations saying that they don't want to be the first one in, because I was in the position where if not for the first one in, then the project would have never existed.
That is a very important lesson for philanthropists to learn.
So it is crucial,
Because that is something that, and I can say, like, there are programs out there that I've supported, and it's something I look for. I want to support things that won't happen unless Dave supports them. And I know that there are lots of things that I supported that happened wouldn't have if I didn't. And that's the most rewarding thing that's ever happened to me as a philanthropist, as a human, as Dave, as anybody, right? Being able to make something happen that wouldn't have happened otherwise is like a unique human experience that everybody should be able to have. And especially for philanthropists who maybe, most of them ended their career, they've retired, they have all the money in the world, they can do whatever they want, right? Being able to make some social change happen that wouldn't happen otherwise, that's something that not every billionaire gets to do. And philanthropists should be open to risks, like take smart risks, look for folks, right? A lot of the older, more established organizations are jumping through all the hoops that funders want them to jump through, but they're not necessarily starting new innovative programs that adopt to a modern world. And so funders need to think about, and they need to look for younger, passionate, recent Stern Social Change Award winners. I'm sure other campuses have similar awards. They need to look for folks that have new, young ideas, because those young people have a different perspective, have a different look out into the world. You shouldn't wait for them to get funding from the establishment before you go in there and make that happen. You were fortunate enough to find to gain some traction. Amir, obviously, I think still has growth that needs to happen.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
You are still you have transitioned out, hired, currently trying to hire your replacement.
Yeah, so we're in the process of hiring our new executive director.
Is this an open? Is this if someone's listening at home and thinks they can do it, should they?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Jobs at amirproject.org.
All right.
Absolutely. I am the board secretary, and not necessarily.
You're the board secretary.
I take the notes. I take the minutes.
You are you're the founder of the organization.
Yes.
And now you're the board. You're the board. You're not even the board chairman.
No, my co-founder is.
Oh, you have a co-founder.
Yeah.
I understand.
Jan. And so Jan is actually serving
I know Jan.
He's serving as interim executive director right now.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so he and Alex Goldfarb and Stephanie Bugash, who's our...
I know Alex.
So Stephanie also is our full-time program director. She's running the ship. Everything is kind of staying on course, and we're just looking for the person to replace me as kind of the person to, steward the foundation direction that we're going to be going in, and the individual contributions that we have and the relationships with the camps that we have, and just kind of running the organization. We're looking for the next person to come in with gusto and a good vision for what Amir should and could be to run it.
Very good. Last question for you. So you graduated from college and ran a social change organization, and now are at many campuses and not camp. What do they call them? Camps, campuses. Right?
Summer camps, yeah.
Summer camps. You're at many camps. You've impacted a lot of kids. There's lots of people out there who know how to garden because of you. Why should someone do that?
I don't think they know how to garden, right?
Fair enough.
Right. So what
enough.
are we?
The kids don't know how to garden.
So what's the impact of what we're doing? It's not that they know how to garden.
My question is why?
Well, I'm going to explain. Right. So Dave. So the kid that goes through our program, they don't come out knowing how to garden, but they come out being more empathetic.
Okay.
Softer.
Arguably more important than gardening.
What I mean, the process.
Not everyone needs to garden. I think that
of
everybody
breaking
needs
up dirt. The process of putting a seed in the ground and watering it, the process of just being really close and attention to detail when dealing with biodiversity, with dealing with life, makes people more empathetic and softer and more caring, right? And so they might not know how to garden hydroponically. They might not know how to garden in the winter or whatever, right? They might not know how to garden, right? But their attitudes towards life and towards other people are undoubtedly different and undoubtedly changed. And whether they're at a Jewish camp, it's through a Jewish lens. If they're at a camp like a Boys and Girls Club camp, it's through whatever lens they're in there, right? Which is unique and special and
Shagets lens.
Excuse me?
Shagets? You don't know that word? It's Yiddish for a guy who isn't Jewish.
No, it's or there are other camps that we work with that are.
How do you not know Shagets? Now I can't even wrap my head around it.
No, I mean you.
It's like it's the boy version of Shiksa.
Oh, no. The point is that what we're doing is not teaching people how to garden. It's about we're teaching people to be more caring.
Yes, but so. Going back in time, Washington University, David the Bear.
Yeah, the Bear.
Right? You could have gotten a job in finance, become an iBanker, gone into government, become a lawyer, real estate, whatever.
I don't know if I could have.
Quite talented. There's lots of things you could have done.
I don't know.
You think that running Amir is the only thing you were qualified to do?
I studied philosophy. Right? What was I qualified to do? I couldn't have gone into iBanking.
You were a college graduate. There's lots of things that you.
I guess so.
And you're I think you would have interviewed well. You're good at like the same skills that allowed you to build Amir would have been useful in other fields.
Sure.
Why should someone, assuming we have at least one college student who's listening, let's say that, and like most people in my experience anyway, people in college have ideas about how they want to make the world a better place, right? They go into iBanking and they forget about those ideas, but. Why should someone do what you've done?
You can't run the company and have a position of influence coming out of college for a big company.
But you got to be in charge of things.
I was in charge. I set the vision. I developed relationships with older individuals who have years and years and years of business experience, and I'm way more prepared to run a financial firm or an investment firm now than I was coming out of college, or than someone even my age who had been working in an investment bank has done.
Right.
Right? So I can raise...
Compare alternate universe, David, where you did go work at Goldman, and you've been there this whole time. Right?
Yeah, no, I think my entrepreneurial
this
spirit,
is probably...
I nourished my entrepreneurial spirit, which I think is crucial and will be really useful for me in the next, 15 years of my life, 20 years of my life.
Hopefully longer than that.
I'm 28 now. When I'm 48, hopefully I won't necessarily need it more. But that experience nourished my entrepreneurial spirit and my management skills and my maturity in ways that working for a larger company as an iBanker or whatever it would have been wouldn't have done.
If you had gone into iBanking, you never would have been invited into the Wine Grants booth. You'd be off iBanking right now. Who knows, doing something far lamer than this. I want to thank you very much for coming in. Before I do my closing spiel, do you have anything that you'd like to say to the folks at home?
Follow what's important. Follow what's important in life, and do what you want to do and what you think is going to make a difference in others' lives, and to work hard and to read the John Wooden book, because there's no big things that happen, just a bunch of small things that happen, which then make up a big thing. So it's really the small.
This is true.
It's
how you spend your days is how you live your life.
Yeah, and this guy John Wooden really had it together.
Wooden.
Great attention to detail, and great respect for integrity and authority and honesty.
Absolutely, we respect integrity, authority, and honesty here in the booth as well. Thank you very much
Thank you for having me,
for joining us, David. As always, I want to thank our host, the Lookout DC, which is a beautiful co-working community for filmmakers located in the Adams Morgan neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and good luck with your funding.